And now back to the Jennifer Fulwiler Show.
It's really fun, and yeah.
Here's Jennifer.
Wow, that's good news.
Jen Fulwiler, so happy to have you with me here this afternoon. My website is thejfshow.com. I would love to hear from you there. And if you have listened to this show for any length of time, you know that I'm constantly saying that I just often find myself so disgusted with modern feminism because it's not pro-women. It's pro-women being selfish. I feel like that term has just been corrupted and it's been used to support so many negative things. And that is why one of my favorite organizations in the world is the New Wave Feminists. They understand what feminism is all about. They are not anti-man. They're pro-women thriving and being empowered, and understand that things like abortion are not ultimately pro-woman things. These are violating things to a woman's body. So you need to go follow them on Instagram. They are the New Wave Feminists there. newwavefeminist.com is their website. And I have Destiny DeLaRosa with us right now. Destiny, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
And what is your title at the New Wave Feminists? Are you the founder? Yeah, you're the founder, right?
I am. I like to go by the Queen of New Wave Feminists, but yeah, founder and president works too.
Yes, the matriarch, maybe. I mean, there are a lot of words that we could work with. And this is actually, it's such a cool example of how God works, because I think I've told you this before. I saw you at the Texas March for Life way back when. I want to say 2008 or 2009. And I saw your sign. I saw the New Wave Feminist sign. And you guys looked so cool. And I saw you specifically, Destiny. And I thought, these are the kinds of women I have been looking for. I so want to know this woman, but I was too intimidated to go up and talk to you. So it's always very cool to me that God kind of answered that prayer and sent you my way anyway.
That is fabulous. And I feel the exact same way. I think that you're a complete icon. So I'm so glad that we've been able to link up through the years.
All right. Well, you're too kind. I really appreciate it. And, I want to talk about your experience. You went to the Women's Convention in Detroit. I want to hear all about that. But I want to start by talking about this issue. I was just talking about this, the big topic today that everyone, at least everyone I follow, is talking about, is the apology that this pastor, Andy Savage, issued in front of his church, High Point Church, in response to a woman named Jules Woodson coming out and saying that when she was in high school, she was a victim of sexual assault, and it was a really not good situation, the way she has described it to the New York Times. I mean, there's no way that this could have been like a misunderstanding or something. I mean, it was like driven out to the woods kind of situation.
Right.
And so he stands up and, is giving some sort of apology. And then, first of all, he calls it an incident. He doesn't go into detail about what happened, just says it was an incident, refers to it only in the language of sin, not in the language of felony, and keeps saying over and over again that it was more than 20 years ago, as if that's really what matters here. And then he gets a standing ovation. So a lot of people are talking about this and saying, hold up, wait a minute, like that. So that's how we're going to go ahead and look at these things in Christianity, like standing ovation for this. So Destiny, my first question is, are you familiar with this story?
I am, and I think you're exactly right. Like, describing predatory behavior as an incident, and the fact that he does keep saying, oh, it was a long time ago, as if somehow that it probably doesn't feel like a long time ago to Miss Woodson, because clearly, she decided to write about it and, kind of bring it up again. And I think that to me is the main point. He was not just confessing because this has been weighing on him for 20 years. He was responding to the fact that it was coming out, and he wanted the church to hear his version of it first. And so as I was kind of reading this story, I just kept thinking, women are watching. Women are watching the church. They are watching the way that evangelicals especially are responding, because where else have we heard, oh, that was a long time ago?
Yeah.
Recently we heard that with the Roy Moore campaign. So I think Christian women and women of faith, and then also secular women in general, are seeing the way that the church is praising a man for coming forward, again, not on his own volition, but because he wanted to get out in front of the story.
Yeah, because she had written about it on a blog. And yeah, so that's something I didn't mention. I just want to jump in to say it was in response to her coming out about it. This was not just him deciding to share with people.
Yeah, it was not a confession at all. And I just keep thinking about the other women in that congregation in particular who have been victims of assault and how that must have felt to them to see a standing ovation for this guy, you know, confessing his sin about this incident or whatever, confessing that he preyed upon a woman in a weak and vulnerable situation.
Who was in high school, by the way. She was a high school kid.
I mean, it's everything about it is horrifying. And so, you know, I personally have experienced sexual assault, and I can tell you that afterwards you blame yourself quite a bit. You know, we talk about victim blaming, but a lot of it is, did I put myself in this situation? Was it something I did? How could I have prevented that? And a lot of times those are the reasons that you do not come forward. And that's the thing that has been so kind of empowering about the Me Too campaign is it's other women saying, you know what, even if you were in a stupid situation or you had done something, at the end of the day, nothing makes this acceptable. When someone else tries to take control of your body in this way and prey upon you, this is not okay. And so it's very, I think we're in a very unique time right now when we basically have made this more of a political issue, and we see it happening in politics. I have seen a lot of Democrats defending Al Franken, and then you see conservatives defending Roy Moore or Trump or whatever it is. But people need to remember women are watching, and we're seeing bad behavior being defended, and it's just reminding us that we're not necessarily safe. And I think that's so unfortunate, especially when you see it coming from the church, because women should feel safe in the church.
I could not have said it better myself. Such a powerful point. I really encourage people to follow you at New Wave Feminists on Instagram. And then, of course, you have newwavefeminists.com. And yeah, Destiny, another thing I would say that might help us understand the severity of this is you were saying women are watching. I would say also our daughters are watching. Your daughters are watching this. Your granddaughters are watching this play out. And is that really the message you want them to have? Ann Voskamp was saying on Twitter, she had a great series of tweets on this, and she said that if we kind of take this boys will be boys mentality that, well, it was a sin, but he talked to people about it and he said some prayers, and so it's really all good now, then we're telling women that it's not that big of a deal when they are treated as objects for a man's sexual pleasure. When they are sexually assaulted, that's it's not really that big of a deal. It's some level of sin, and it needs to be confessed, and then we all move on. Is that really the message that we want our daughters and our granddaughters to be receiving?
Or even, I could argue, our sons. You mentioned that we're not man-hating feminists. There's a very good reason for that. New Wave Feminist is different because I have 2 daughters and 2 sons. So I look at everything through this filter of human dignity. And I think when women are empowered, men are empowered, and the world becomes a better place when we're supporting each other. I don't want my sons to think that this type of behavior is acceptable. I don't want my daughters to feel like they would be responsible for predatory behavior. So again, yes, I think it's very important because these are messages that are absolutely being passed down, and that they are seeing that their humanity and their human dignity is less valuable than their male counterparts. And I don't want my sons or my daughters believing that.
That's a great point. And that's one of the many things that I love about your organization, the New Wave Feminists, is that, again, you're not anti-man. You are pro-human dignity. And that is where it all starts, is this idea that we are all sons and daughters of God. And this, that is an interesting question. What message is this sending our sons and our grandsons? I mean, they could end up with a really skewed impression of how the world works that could lead them to doing irreparable damage to other people or damage to themselves if they think that this kind of thing is just not that big of a deal. I mean, this impacts our sons too.
Well, or if they think that they are just these carnal animals that, can't be held responsible because, as you said, boys will be good boys. This mentality that's pushed on them that they have no self-control, that's not good for women, but that's also not good for men. Why on earth are we teaching them that, you can't override that? You can't control yourself. That's a load of crud. So
Yeah, it's a great point. So I love hearing your take on that. I knew that you would have a strong take on it. So I want to shift gears and talk about how did you end up at the women's convention in Detroit? And tell me about what is the premise of this event?
So the Women's Convention was actually put on by the women who organized the Women's March in D.C. And, of course, that was the march that we were kind of removed from quite publicly because we were anti-abortion. And when we originally signed up to sponsor the march, we let them know we were anti-abortion, but, here are all the issues that we agree on, and here's how we can work together. So we were accepted as a sponsor. But then once the Atlantic actually did an article mentioning that they were being inclusive by allowing pro-life feminists to participate, and then, all hell broke loose on Twitter, and everyone was demanding that we be removed because, obviously being pro-life is so anti-woman, which, as you alluded to earlier, couldn't be further from the truth. But at the same time, this is that organization. So they decided to put on an event in Detroit, the Women's Convention, and it was heavily sponsored by Planned Parenthood. So I kind of knew what I was walking into when I went to it, but at the same time, there were a lot of other issues that were being discussed there, common ground issues that I want more pro-life people to think outside of just this one realm of, we're fighting the big abortion industry. Because it was in Michigan, one of the issues they talked about was the Flint water crisis. There are actually women who are miscarrying because of the toxic water that they have up there, and they're very impoverished communities where they can't afford these $40 filters that they have to replace on their water every single week because it's so toxic. I mean, this is an issue that we can all come together on and try to support the women of Flint. And there were multiple issues like that were brought up when we're talking about sexual harassment in the workplace. All of these things, if the pro-life community and faith-based communities stopped looking at them as, just I think that's what's so weird. We label certain issues as like liberal issues or conservative issues when really they're just human issues that we should all care about. And the more that we can do that and come together with people who disagree with us on certain issues, the more we can actually dialogue with them. When we're able to find common ground, I've found that has been absolutely the most useful tool with New Wave feminism is when I'm talking to this radical feminist who supports abortion and we're talking about something that has nothing to do with abortion, but then I'm able to explain some of my backstory, that I got pregnant at 16 with my son. And the only reason that abortion was not an option for me is because I had the support of my family and I had a safety net that was there to catch me. And how can we provide that for more women? Suddenly they're much more open-minded to the pro-life narrative and, the support that we truly believe in, because at the end of the day, they believe in that too. So again, I think that was how the Detroit Women's Convention was just a really cool experience. And it definitely made me want to encourage more people to get out of their comfort zones. It's real easy to preach to the choir and the people already believe like us. But when you put yourself in positions to be around people who think differently, not only do you learn about really cool initiatives like helping the women in Flint, Michigan, but you're also able to dialogue with people who you can actually persuade them and change their mind.
Oh, I love a standing ovation for you. Are someone who deserves a standing ovation. Everything you just said, I could not agree with more. And there's so much that I want to touch on there. So first of all, I've noticed this too. I was just talking to a friend about this morning. That, for example, a couple of years ago, I went to a fundraiser for an AIDS fundraising group. It was quite a few friends of mine were there, and they're gay and living gay lifestyles. And I was hanging out with them, and I was at an AIDS fundraiser, and I got some raised eyebrows from the Catholic and the pro-life community, kind of like, oh, well, is Jen a liberal Catholic, or does she disagree with what the church teaches about marriage and AIDS fundraising? Is that so? She must be a liberal Catholic now. And it was just so interesting, the response I got, and it made me realize, like, this, we are not doing ourselves any favors, and we are not doing our witness any favors by defining some issues as quote unquote liberal, quote unquote conservative, like, why aren't we all about supporting AIDS fundraising and AIDS services? I mean, that is a great thing to support. That is a great thing to get behind. And no, just because I am hanging out with people who have a different view on how they want to live their lives than mine, it doesn't mean that I agree with every single aspect of everything they believe. It just means we're friends. And I thought it was a good cause. And I was there at this event. And I think that we will not really be able to have this culture listen to our perspective, our Catholic pro-life perspective, if we're constantly putting up walls and saying, well, I can't go to that event because those are liberal Catholics, or that's a conservative event. Those people are far right. Like, we are shooting ourselves in the foot by drawing these lines and putting up these walls, not only between ourselves and other Catholics, but between ourselves and like you said, the people at this women's convention.
Well, and I think that that's kind of the thing. Like, as pro-life people, one of our main focus is bringing human dignity to the unborn and asking people to understand this is a human being that is worthy of human dignity, but at the same time, how do we dehumanize others? And we do see that a lot, whether it's the abortion industry or feminists or whatever it is. Like, we lump people together. And I have just found that in my experience, if I have a smile on my face and I start talking to someone who completely disagrees with me on the issue of abortion, but we start talking about, I had it happen at the airport on the way back from the Detroit Women's Convention, sitting there talking to a woman who could not have been more opposite for me, religiously, race, age, absolutely everything. And we started talking about a fundraising panel that was put on that we both learned a lot from, and it was really interesting. And she said, yeah, and I also went to the abortion stories panel. Okay, so the abortion stories was they had 5 women who were talking about this campaign to remove the stigma from abortion. And so, of course, all of their stories were very positive, and they talked about how they had had multiple abortions and this was the best thing for them. And I promise I did not go to this panel with the intention of starting anything off. I plan on sitting in the audience and learning. I really do mean that. But at the very end, they were doing a Q&A, and I raised my hand and I said, what if there's a woman who maybe was coerced into an abortion and it isn't a positive story? Would she be welcome to be part of your campaign? Does her voice matter? And the woman who ran the panel actually, she looked at me and she rolled her eyes, and then she looked over and said, does anyone else have a question? And I thought that was going to be the end of it, but something really cool happened. Another hand shot up at the front, and this woman said, no, that's a great question. You need to answer it. And this, again, I'm assuming is a woman who is very pro-choice. And so the moderator said, oh, I guess I didn't really understand it. Okay, so over the next 3 minutes, 2 to 3 other women in the audience clarified my question because they wanted to get it answered. And because they understood that when we only use certain voices of women who have had positive abortion experiences, that's using women as propaganda. That's what you're doing. And this is a very nuanced issue. And there are so many women who have had regret. And how can they find healing? And where are their resources? And so it was really, really neat to see other women come around and say, no, that deserves an answer. And so the next morning I was down at the coffee shop, and a woman who works for the Planned Parenthood here in Texas actually came up and thanked me for asking that question, because she said, I never know how to answer that for the women who have had regretful experiences. Now, again, this is a group that these people are all predominantly pro-choice, yet we're able to find a common ground issue when it comes to abortion. There are a lot of women who don't feel like they have another choice, and so they end up having to make this violent choice. And how can we give them some healing if they're post-abortive? If they feel like in the pro-choice side they're not allowed to talk about it, and they feel like on the pro-life side they're going to be called murderers, that's not okay. We have to carve out a niche where it's safe for them to talk about what they experience so that they can find healing.
I love that, Destiny. Again, the people need to follow you on Instagram. You are New Wave Feminists there. They can look you up at newwavefeminists.com. And yeah, Destiny, we should always be leaders in being open to hearing other people's stories, other people's perspectives. I mean, like you, even sitting on that panel and listening to women who say, I'm glad I had an abortion. We don't agree with that worldview, but we should always be open to listening to them and hearing what they have to say, because it is a humanizing thing. And at the end of the day, that is what the very core of being pro-life is about, is recognizing not just the humanity, but the human dignity in every single person. And I admit I have fallen into this. I mean, I've been to some of the events here at the state capitol here in Texas. I've been to events where I'm with the pro-life people and there are pro-choice people. And I have had those moments of thinking, oh, those guys, especially if it's someone's like screaming profanity or being hostile, it is easy to think, oh, well, they're the enemy over there. I'm one of the good guys and they're the bad guys. But you know what? You know what's ironic is I'm there to be pro-life, but that is actually not really a pro-life position, to dehumanize them, to strip them of their humanity and their story and just say, they're the bad guys, I'm the good guys, I need to defeat them, moving on. That's not pro-life.
We've all been there, though, and I think it's just a natural human reaction. But one of the things that has helped me whenever I'm up against the protester who's screaming in my face and, demanding free abortion on demand without apology or whatever their chants are, because it's very easy to say, you're a monster. Why would you think this is acceptable? But I realize, whenever they compare it to like a root canal, like an abortion's like getting a root canal or having your wisdom teeth pulled. I've never in my life felt passionately enough about a root canal that I would scream in someone's face about it. And so I always think about that. Where is that emotion coming from? Why are they that upset? Why are they screaming? Why are they this enraged? To me, that actually speaks more for their humanity than anything else. There is some level of pain or discomfort with the choice they made that is coming out. And that is why they feel like they need to validate it even more. So if we can be there to listen, even when they're screaming in our face, I think it's a huge opportunity we've been given.
Wow, that is a great point. I love that to say, and this is especially with the March for Life coming up, and there's going to be a lot of discussion about this issue. I know people probably have a lot of Facebook friends, their family, their neighbors who are just going to be driving them insane on this issue. And that is a great thing to take a step back and say, why are they so passionate about this issue? There must be pain here. There must be some deep experience that would lead them to speak in this way about this issue. That has to be there. I think it's so important. And Destiny, I like it that you went to this event. So you were at the Women's Convention in Detroit. It's put on by the same people who did the Women's March. Big Planned Parenthood presence there, big pro-choice theme. But you were talking about how there are a lot of common ground issues here. Like you said, if people missed it when you first joined us, the issue of women having miscarriages in Flint, Michigan because of lack of access to good water. We can get behind these issues, and we should be getting behind these issues. And when we say, well, I'm not going to talk to that woman over there because she's associated with Planned Parenthood, even though she's doing good work for the women in Flint, Michigan, that is not the right mentality to bring to these kind of things. And Destiny, one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about this, as you know, my background, I used to be adamantly pro-choice. I was super pro-choice, atheist. I donated money to Now. I donated money to Planned Parenthood. I thought that abortion was the very key to women's freedom. And I really didn't know any pro-lifers. I live in a part of the country where, in the social circles in my city, everyone's in favor of abortion. I mean, it's just, you know, Austin, Texas. I mean, in the circles I ran in, it's just everyone is pro-choice. It's like being in favor of air or water. I mean, you just don't question these things. And so I really didn't know people who were seriously pro-life. And so I honestly had all of these stereotypes. Like, they are all these religious fundamentalists. They're all like patriarchal, and they just want to keep women down, and they don't want women to have freedom. And because I never actually encountered any serious pro-lifers, there was nothing that shattered that stereotype. And so many people like me 20 years ago are able to walk around in these kind of mentalities because they're not encountering us. Why are they not encountering us? Because we ghettoize ourselves. We put up walls and boundaries and say, well, I can't encounter those people over there, even though they're doing good work, because, they're in favor of Planned Parenthood. And I bet you have seen people who have had a different impression of pro-lifers, even if they didn't immediately change their view on abortion, just because you were there. You had a presence at their event.
Absolutely. And I think, you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly how it is. These preconceived notions that they have of us that, we hate women, or we want to control their bodies, or we're all oppressed, or whatever it is. And so then when they meet us in real life or even online, and we reaffirm that by screaming or typing in all caps or whatever weird thing, just don't be weird, man. It's really so easy to change people's impression if you're just not weird.
That's a great place to start. Just don't be weird. I was actually talking to someone this morning, Destiny, about how there's kind of a fine line between people just being really holy and like connected to God and being weird. And we were laughing that, sometimes we don't know where to draw the line in our own lives, but that is a good litmus test. Don't be weird. So Destiny, we are about out of time, which is a shame because I would love to talk to you all day. Final question. Are you guys headed to the March for Life here in a few weeks?
We are. We are very excited to be headed out there. So if any of your listeners are going, then look for the pink signs we'll be carrying around that say I'm a pro-life feminist, and definitely come be not weird with us and march with us.
I love it. Come be not weird. And Destiny, by the way, I love that you put on Instagram, you have these signs that talk about science, like you guys are pro-science. And I love it. You know how to use the language of the culture to be like, oh, you guys like science? So do we. Let's talk about fetal development. Let's talk about when life begins. We love science. So I could not be a bigger fan of the work that you're doing. Anyone who is going to be at the March for Life needs to look for you guys, the New Wave Feminists. And Destiny, tell people where they can find you guys online.
So probably Facebook is our most prolific platform. So follow us, New Wave Feminists, plural, on Facebook. And then, of course, our website, newwavefeminist.com.
All right. Well, I personally strongly recommend people go look you up on Facebook, give you a follow, New Wave Feminists. Destiny, we would love to chat with you again one of these days soon. And in the meantime, keep up the great work.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care. And we will be back with more after this here on The Jennifer Fulwiler Show.